This is the Modern Architect radio show and podcast. The Modern Architect features one-on-one interviews with renowned and cutting-edge architects, influencers, and sustainability leaders. Our show informs and illuminates the transformation that architecture brings to our cities, communities, and lives. And now, introducing the host of The Modern Architect, Tom Dioro.
Today's guest, we're really honored and truly excited. I'll let you know, folks, before we started. This is great. We're joined by Randy Collins, structural engineer and the founder and principal of FTF Engineering. They have offices in San Francisco and San Luis Obispo. FTF creates value by designing safe and enduring structures with integrity. They build an evolving world to ensure communities are safe and businesses prosper. You can find them on the web at ftfengineering.com. Again, that's ftfengineering.com. Today's episode is made possible by Swatchbox, the leading sample platform for architects and designers. Swatchbox brings thousands of product samples from the world's leading manufacturers into one platform. Browse materials for inspiration, create custom collections, then request your samples for free with automatic next day or second day shipping. Get started at swatchbox.com. Hello, Randy. Honored and super excited to have you on The Modern Architect. Thanks for being here, really.
Good to meet you, Tom.
Randy, when we were going, I'm so excited about this show because I can tell early on how things are going to go. When I asked you about a quote, and you've said so many, you've got so many that go around, and I love what you said about our world, our society, our place is fast-moving, fast-paced, and in effect, mankind, or we're not really meant to do things at this pace with this level of stress. Did I paraphrase it somewhat accurate?
Yeah.
And why so? Share with the audience why so. I'd love to hear this.
Well, I was listening to an interview by a gentleman that had written a book that I had read, and he pointed out that in this modern world, like, everything is up for grabs. The definition of anything and everything is up for grabs. And he said he was from a rural place in England, and I forget exactly how far he wound back the clock, but it was only several hundred years. And he's like, look, several hundred years ago, if I was born in that village, I would be baptized, married, and buried in the same churchyard. By the time I was 4 or 5 years old, I would have met my future wife. I would absolutely unequivocally know what my career was going to be. I would be surrounded by extended family. I would never leave that village. Like, I conformed to the world. It wasn't up to the world to conform to me. And there's a point where, like when you go to the grocery store and you need to get toothpaste and there's 47 varieties, it's like, fuck, can I just have like 2 varieties or 3? Like, it's overwhelming, it's overwhelming. So just the complexities, and just in order to navigate that, we've got to push back on a lot of stimulus, a lot of, no, not going to do that. No, like, just get Colgate, same as last time. Don't. And this isn't a plug for Colgate.
Totally get where you're going with that. And how is that even in your business with FTF Engineering, that mindset to be able to deal with the complexities and the ever-changing challenges on a day-to-day, if not hour-to-hour basis?
Fortunately, that is a good question. Fortunately, structural engineering isn't, I don't want to say isn't fashionable, but isn't prone to fads in the sense, like, people will say to me, oh, have you worked in this area? Have you worked up in the North Bay? Have you worked in Napa? Have you worked down on the, I'm like, no, but the physics are all the same. Like, we're still on planet Earth. I know all the things that I need to know to, the information I need to gather, the math I need to do. But so as fast changing as we are, it's structural engineering. We're not going to reinvent, massively reinvent what we're doing here. I think the challenge for us, for the structural engineering profession, our capabilities to do math are extraordinary, but yet still what we're modeling is spectacularly complex, and we're still making approximations. And at the end of the day, we're not working with Swiss watch builders. We're not working with aerospace manufacturers that have extremely precise and accurate tolerances. We're dealing with construction. And in fact, you had mentioned a quote, and specific to what I do for a living, this is my all-time favorite quote of structural engineering. Structural engineering is the art of molding materials we do not wholly understand into shapes we cannot precisely analyze, so as to withstand forces we cannot really assess in such a way that the community at large has no reason to suspect the extent of our ignorance.
Oh.
Now, some structural engineers will, like, why are you saying that, dude? We know what we're doing. It's like, you have to have a lot of experience to do this well. It's not just the math. You have to take the math and go, wait a minute, does that make sense? Is that what I've seen out there? No, it's not enough. Something in the math needs to be added.
What draws you and drew you so much to that, to your field, to your profession?
When I was a kid, I really liked trains and I wanted to drive trains. And so I understood that to drive a train was to be an engineer. And so I said, I want to be an engineer. And all of a sudden I'm taking all this math and I don't really understand why you need all this math to drive a train. And I'm like, maybe it's the timetables, maybe it's not, like, I don't know. And all this math, and then it's materials and mechanics of materials and statics and dynamics. And finally I was like, guys, I just want to drive a train. And they're like, oh, you don't need to do this. But I was so far in. No, I'm kidding. My dad was an engineer and he spoke very highly of the profession. I was, as a kid, I just was a very sort of tactile, physical, like, I'm in this world as a physical being, and construction fascinated me, combined with an aptitude for math and science. I was an underachiever academically in high school. I referred to it as a period of social development. And
Love it.
I could do math and science like really easily. I wouldn't do any homework and I'd get A's on tests, and people around me were like, what the heck? So I worked for a year after high school in something, I don't know if my grandmother had been praying for me all those years or what, because it was like a light switch. And I was just like, game on, I'm going to college and I'm gonna crush it. I'm gonna give it my all. And I'd never done that academically at all. And so I was at community college in the Boston area for a year, down in San Diego for 2 more years, and then transferred to UC San Diego. The program at UC San Diego is only structural engineering. It's not a civil program. And so it was like buildings and structural, and they have one of the world's most active laboratories for full-scale testing of structural components and entire buildings. And I got to work at the lab and really see stuff break. You're learning concrete, but then you're going to the lab and watching stuff break, and it's like, it was really formative experiences. And then came up here for grad school at Berkeley, and was fortunate to work at some firms that really have a long history of not only of excellence in their engineering and their clients and their buildings, but also a real dedication to the profession of structural engineering. So in Northern California, we have one of the most active structural engineering communities in the world. Regular meetings, and it's very much, it's like when you're at the association meetings, there's a great, just a community of structural engineers wanting to serve the community. And then when we walk out of those rooms, we're competitors, and we're, but it's really been, I started my own company 5 years out of school, so it's been 20 years now. And that has held me to the profession. Like, I've tried to quit. I'll joke, like, I'm so frustrated. I quit, someone turn off the lights and lock up, and it's like an insurance policy, we're going to get canceled. Wait a minute, I can't quit. And it's beautiful because I know what I'm doing tomorrow. Like right now, I'm not looking at real estate in North Carolina.
Okay.
Like this is what I do. This is where I do it. And having that back to the toothpaste aisle, right?
Sure.
It's like I'm not wondering if I should go do this or that or whatever. It's like this is what I do. It's my company. Um, what are we gonna do in 2023? Because I know this is what we're doing.
The 5 years right out of school, is that common among structural engineers to start your own
I
enterprise?
have actually never heard of anybody else doing it.
Okay.
And I wouldn't recommend it. I was recently at a 25th anniversary party of a local architecture firm, and the gentleman who started, one of the founding partners, who's very close, if not retired, he he has a more singular path. Like I would probably be somewhere else if it wasn't for having the company. He's one of those, like, I have a vision of the architecture, whatever. And he got up and was giving a little speech, and he said, if you're thinking of going out on your own, and my immediate thought was, don't, it's not worth the brain damage. And he's like, I can't tell you enough, do it. It's wonderful. It's this, it's that, And I loved his energy and his passion. And his vision, and I am really grateful that I did it. It's nutty. I was talking with another colleague who sold her firm. She grew up to about 40 or 50 people and sold it to one of these many thousand person firms. They wanted a San Francisco office, and she's now fully retired. And I was joking that I kind of have 5 jobs, and I've got to do all 5 of them, and I've got to make it fit in 40 or 50 hours a week because I'm not going to kill myself doing this. And you have to have a stomach for, like, yeah, that's not going to get done. That's not going to get done. That's not going to get done. The real key things are going to get done, and there's going to be a lot of things that are left undone.
Wow.
It's small business,
This is terrific. You're listening to the Modern Architect podcast and show. We're talking today with Randy Collins, structural engineer and founder of FTF Engineering. You can find them on the web at ftfengineering.com. That's ftfengineering.com. You talked about starting your own firm now. Obviously, you're successful. Does the gut wrench ever go away at some level?
Not because of external circumstances, but because of an internal focus. Okay. There's always the stimulation. There's always the opportunity to be freaking out. And in fact, when I was talking about going out on my own, I was working for a general contractor. So I was at Magnuson Clemensic out of Seattle for a year. I was at Degenkolb Engineers for 2 years, and then I was at Hathaway Dinwiddie Construction Company for a few years. And I was talking with the structural engineer who was on our job and talking about going out on my own. And he was like, no way, the risk, the lawsuit, the risk. And I'm like, what does that have, like, insurance? Like, I'm not going to do something or not do something out of fear. Yeah, there's always something to worry about. You got too much work and you got to find people. You don't have enough work and you got to find work. There's definitely, you just have to focus on, like, that's out of my control, so I've got to let it go. This is what's in my control. It has always been a challenge of faith. Absolutely.
I like that. The challenge of faith. So a belief system, obviously confidence, and a willingness to do the somewhat unknown. Do you think it's innate, or can you instill it in somebody?
That's a good question. My impulse answer is innate, in the sense of risk-taking personality, a challenger personality. On the other hand, it might just be a matter of drawing someone out to more, like, think through the things that are holding them back and realize that those aren't, that's a perceived thing. It's not a real thing. I know that my experience in the profession of structural engineering, I've met few people who have the kind of personality that I have. I'm very much a challenger. Like, you tell me there's a rule, and I'm going to go, well, who the hell are you, and why is that the rule? Like, who's the authority that this rule rests on, and why is it the rule? Which is like, that's bad instructional engineering. It's with the way I was brought up in the profession, both academically and then mentored as a young engineer. The education was all about understanding the principles. And oh, by the way, there's a thing over there called the building code, and you can figure that out when you go to work. And then the firms that I worked at, particularly with the seismic emphasis of design, were about the realities of seismic performance and capacity design, and the need for buildings to be able to move in an earthquake. The way that we actually model that, the way that the building code churns out these things, it's like that was almost an afterthought. Like, now that you've thought this through this seismic evaluation, go see what the code says. And it's like, code? Like, what's the code? Well, it's, eventually you got to go to the code, but understanding why the code says what it says, because the code's basically like a recipe for chocolate chip cookies, but nowhere in the code does it say, like, you should make good chocolate chip cookies. Like, the building code really provides the opportunity for someone to not get the big picture and still design buildings and get permits and stamp and sign them and build them, and they still don't get the big picture because they're just following the recipe.
A segue in that, following the recipe, I noticed your website, and I looked at other structural engineers, is yours looks by design very well. It's almost like a I don't want to say that alcohol bar, but like, tequila company. It's just very well done, and it looks like it's with thought. It's with thought, and it has intention. Is that true, or am I?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And early on, when I was starting out on my own, I had been involved in a Major League Baseball stadium, hospital retrofit, work at UC Stanford and UC Berkeley. At Stanford and UC Berkeley, and then a biotech, $150 million biotech lab down at Genentech. And I started on my own doing wood frame residential remodeling. I'd never had a class in wood. I'd never put a set of drawings together because I'd done construction administration and seismic evaluations and reports at the firms that I worked at. And I'm like, get the book, read it, figure it out, go do, like, it's another material. Like, you know what you got to do? You got to connect the elbow bone to the, shoulder bone to like, you know what you got to do. So I just went at it. I'm losing my train of thought.
It's okay. Keep it going. I love it.
Question.
I love it.
No. Remind me what the question was.
It's about the branding and
the website.
And everything you do. It's very nice. It looks like it's deliberate.
Yeah.
In contrast.
Now, so early on, I said, no one taught me this. I just was, just look at the problem. I would say to my CAD, because I didn't have CAD standards. I didn't, we're just kind of making this up as we go. And I always had a sense that our drawings are the most important product that we have. But as an engineer, you're like, no, my math, my computer model, like we're over there in the weeds. And if I can't present the information to a building official for review and to a contractor to build it, and they've got 1,000 things going through their mind, it's got to be presented graphically in a way that the user is like, you want to draw them in. And there's been a few occasions over the course of my career where I go out to the site and a contractor has said to me, I enjoy looking at your drawings. And I have said, thank you very much. And that's not by accident. That's not by accident. We work really hard. Obviously, we're going to do great engineering, but I can't really prove that to anybody, other than another engineer who goes, wow, look at that. Like our clients, by definition of hiring us don't know what we do. But that's, do the cookies taste good, is the quality of the drawings and how the contractor can put them into place. And then obviously, ultimately, when an earthquake comes and your building performs well.
I love this. You're listening to the Modern Architect podcast and show. We're talking today with founder and principal Randy Collins of FTF Engineering. For more information, feel free to visit the website at ftfengineering.com. That is ftfengineering.com. Randy, what I've found in your show today that's really interesting is you've taken some very complex ideas and thoughts and places, and I'm sure you do with work, and make them simple, which is actually a tremendous challenge, to take something that's very complex, explain it, and have, oh, I understand that. Is that something that you intrinsically work on yourself, to go, how do I explain this to these people who may have a completely different view than I do, so that they have an understanding at least, and then they can make a decision? Because that's a rare quality.
Yeah. I want to be careful here. Yes. Thank you. A contractor recently that I get along with really well, I was kind of giving him the compliment. I'm like, Aaron, I think you're smarter than I am. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I said, the way that you can navigate. So Aaron and I work on these high-end residential projects where he might be working for a client and doing a $15 million remodel of their house. These are very, very sophisticated people. They are very, very successful people. They are very, very busy people. And some of the stuff that I see on the back end, I'd be like, just my emotional makeup. I'd be like, and he navigates this stuff, very complex issues, personalities, like the way that he navigates it. And I said to him, I said, let me make sure you understand what I mean by you're smarter. If someone knew the two of us and they were picking who they would want to live next door to them, most people would pick you. And he was laughing and whatever. I said, now on the other hand, if they were picking someone to take their SAT exams for them, they'd probably pick me. And he's like, yeah, you're right. You can do math. So yes, I have, there's a way that my brain just does these concepts. I mean, when I was in college, I noticed a pattern of exams where it's like you learned how to solve the problem this way, and you learned it this way, and you learned it this way, and then in the exam, they would ask the same concept, but they'd come in it from the side door, and people would just get blown up. And I'd be like, oh, this is the same thing we've been doing all along. It's just a side door. The way that my brain works quickly and analytically is very well suited to the structural engineering, keeping the big picture in mind that we deal with things as beams and columns and bolts and connections and footings and walls, but we're really creating a system that has to work together as a structure, but then the system, that structure has to serve a higher purpose of whatever that shelter is providing: hospital, biotech lab, baseball stadium, house, kitchen remodel, and suit that owner's goals. And my experience of working at firms that have been around for 75 to 100 years and do that extremely well, and the little things that I would overhear as a young engineer, combined with working for a contractor for 2 years and never hearing anything about structural engineering unless something was wrong. It's like, that's the role I play. So some architects don't like working with me because I'm fussy and complicated and I talk too much. And another engineer will just like, hey, do this. And they're like, okay, do that. And I'm like, hey, why are we doing that? In fact, I just had that same contractor. There was some communication about some options. They've done some demo and exposed some things. And I'm like, we should just leave that here. And they're like, yeah, they want to move the wall. And I'm like, oh, fine, like we can do that. And so we were talking about some nuances and some he's talking about the costs, and I'm like, there's more to it than that. And we sent an email to the architect, and the architect basically just knocked it down. Just like that, the client doesn't want that. And I'm like, who are you to say what the client wants? You're the architect. Like, this is a complex issue that frankly most structural engineers can't explain. And as a professional, like, you should be saying, have that conversation with a client. And every project doesn't necessarily need like a deep dive, but just pointing out that the building code is minimum standards for construction. It's not best practices. And another way to really underscore that I heard that really resonated with me is anything less is illegal construction. Like, this is not the best we can do. So does that meet code? Well, wait a minute. If you think code means earthquake proof, if you think code means, what's best, well, the building code is not just written by engineers. The building code is also has influence from builders and developers and, all kinds of people that want to keep the standards really low so that when they go to alter a building, they're not saddled with a ton of mandates. But I want my clients to understand you don't have to do this, but it might be most prudent to do this. And so what's your expectations? I had a conversation like this one time about doing some seismic improvements on a building. And the guy was like, I got a house in Palm Springs. I got a house in Hawaii. And I'm like, I get it. The likelihood that that person is in that house when a big earthquake happens is very low. And they don't need that house after an earthquake because they've got 5 other houses. On the other hand, you might have a situation where, well, the biotech lab that I worked on, they had like a double seismic system. It was very sophisticated, very expensive. And I was like, wow, that's expensive and sophisticated. And they said, well, yeah, we might have a beaker sitting on a lab bench that's got $1 billion in science sitting. So this building needs to really have extremely high seismic performance. That makes sense. So
that's awesome.
Navigating that and getting the bigger picture. No one wakes up in the morning and goes, you know what I hope I do today? I hope I call a structural engineer. Like, no, even my wife doesn't say that, right? It's like, oh, we gotta have a structural engineer on this job. Oh, I was hoping we could avoid that. That's the reality, right? So how do we keep that end goal in mind? And I've always said in my practice, my goal is no surprise clients. Okay, that happened. Yeah, remember we had that conversation.
This is outstanding. What would you like to share with your audience today, Randy, that we may not have touched on in your show?
Oh, good. I mean, do we have to stick to structural
engineering? No, we don't.
Oh.
You absolutely do not. It's your show. Absolutely do not.
I don't even know where to start, man. COVID has changed us all. Man, has COVID changed us all. And I am learning in the past month or two, I am learning compassion in a way that is changing me. And, we've all been through whatever we've been through COVID, going home I talk to people in healthcare, and to have seen people die alone, they're just like, it's like, I didn't personally have that experience in terms of someone close to me who needed to be hospitalized. You couldn't go see him. You knew it was at that point. But I had my own trauma. Maybe it was self-inflicted. Maybe it was nature and the universe. But finding that compassion and just like, compassion for the people around you and the creatures that they've become today, and just like the world's just trying to go so fast, and it's like, can we just slow down? I have tended to be a very active. I just have a lot of energy, and it's good to let it out. And a couple of years ago, COVID was well underway, and I really sensed a call to just like really slow down. Don't ride my bicycle for 8 to 10 hours a week. And people they wouldn't ask me if I was okay. They would look at my wife and go, "Are you okay?" Like, "You're not riding?" "No." "Oh my gosh, Shannon, are you okay?" Not me.
Yeah.
And it's like all the things that we think are so precious, it might not be what's precious.
Wow. Randy, a real honor and pleasure having you as a guest today. Thank you very much. I hope you consider coming on again pretty soon. Really, I know there's a lot more to talk about, and this is a terrific show. Really, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Tom.
Thank you. You've been listening to the Modern Architect podcast and show. Our guest today has been Randy Collins, structural engineer and founder of FTF Engineering, which has offices in San Francisco and San Luis Obispo. The FTF Engineering creates value by designing safe and enduring structures with integrity, and they build in an evolving world, that's for sure, evolving world, to ensure communities are safe and businesses prosper. You can find them on the web at ftfengineering.com. That's ftfengineering.com. Thank you for listening. Today's episode is made possible by Swatchbox, the leading sample platform for architects and designers. Swatchbox brings thousands of product samples from the world's leading manufacturers into one platform. Browse materials for inspiration, create custom collections, then request your samples for free with automatic next day or second day shipping. Get started at swatchbox.com.